Injection π23, no name no number, is a 2019 Spanish survival horror game all about solving puzzles and avoiding bizarre creatures in a town based upon the real-life location of Malaga. It's definitely a throwback to old-school survival horror, back when the focus was more on figuring out what to do and where to go, rather than combat. So for half the game you have to avoid enemies entirely and use stealth, and when you do eventually get guns, ammo is rare, so you only kill when you absolutely have to. But it's the puzzles that are the most interesting part of the game. They get increasingly more and more difficult the further in you get, and in fact as of writing this there's no walkthroughs or online guides, so it's very easy to get stuck for hours not knowing what to do and without any way of getting any help. Sometimes you have to think outside the box and use your head to try and figure something out. My advice is to be observant, look around and never just guess at a puzzle, as there is always going to be a clue somewhere. And if you do get stuck, then there's a good chance that there's a document or an item that you missed, which is easy to do as none of the items really stand out from the backgrounds. I wish that they had some way of attracting your attention better. But this is just one of the problems that I think that the game's got. In fact, at times it almost feels like a broken product. The translations from Spanish into English are just terrible. The subtitles look like they're just slapped on the screen as an afterthought, and half the time they don't make any sense. Sometimes bits aren't translated at all, other times it's things like, antidote ends with poisoning. What? It's just a weird game that often feels like some student art house movie full of incoherent nonsense.
¿En qué punto perdí la capacidad de disfrutar de la vida? Todas mis decisiones.
To me, this sort of thing isn't scary and isn't thought-provoking, no matter how hard it tries to be. Maybe you like this sort of thing, but I like it when a game's message is a little clearer. And it's a shame because the game does actually get horror right every now and then. In fact, it's surprising the amount of restraint it uses to get some subtle scares. Sure, it's got those cliche jump moments, but it also has smaller, less obvious moments, with things that are easy to miss, but when you do notice them, it can kind of freak you out. Dark figures just stand in windows, or characters appear and then disappear, drawing little attention to themselves. So much so that you may start to even doubt whether you saw anything or not, or if your eyes are just playing tricks on you. It lets you play with whatever type of camera you prefer, which I think is a great idea, as we've all got our favourite, from first person, third person, or in fixed camera angles. Although with the fixed camera angles, the tank controls are almost impossible to use, making playing this way not really an option. Graphically, yeah, it's not anything special, but it does at least try to have its own distinct look with the black and white weird cutscenes and the wide range of different enemy types. But despite this, it's still not enough to make up for the game's problems. It can crash all the time, making some sections a pain to get through. The PS4 trophies are broken so that most of them are still at 0%. There's a voice recognition system which I still don't know how it's supposed to work. Occasionally I can get it to pop a word up on the screen, but I think that because it's in Spanish, you need to speak Spanish to get it to do anything? I don't know. The game works best when it gives you a small area with lots of puzzles packed in, but when it opens up to a larger map, it just becomes a boring job to get around, with you constantly battling against your low stamina bar, running for a bit, walking for a bit, waiting for your bar to refill, rinse and repeat over a distance that doesn't need to be this big. Injection π23, no name no number, cannot be recommended. It does have some clever puzzles and doesn't treat players like idiots, and the horror is refreshingly subtle at times, but it's not enough to make up for the game's shortcomings. Oh well, at least the trophies are broken so you can just delete the game off your system entirely and forget that it ever existed.